So we have the door this is what we've been working on. This is Rethunk Junk by Laura. It's oyster and it has a dark glaze over it.
A couple things really quick. I'll go over some of the tools that I use when I'm doing this. Number one, get yourself a good pair of leather gloves, because when you're cutting this chicken wire, especially this new stuff that we're using, we went from using the 1-inch hexagon to the smaller stuff. You get poked a lot, scratched a lot.
Netting mesh.
Okay,
Wire netting mesh is what we're using instead of chicken wire.
There you go. You get poked and scratched, so especially when you're cutting it. So have yourself a good pair of leather gloves. I don't know why regular scissors are here, but that's okay.
That was me.
That was your mess.
Yeah.
Good pair of cutters. Tin snips. These work really well for cutting, especially for cutting when you have long lengths to cut. If you have just short lengths to cut, a smaller pair like this. I prefer the larger pair because you get more cut at once. Tape measure, staple gun. I'm using 5/16 staples, and I use the stainless steel staples. And the reason why is for two reasons. Number one, they're a little bit stronger, and number two, if by any chance there's any kind of moisture, they will not rust as quick as regular staples will. A regular screwdriver. I've got my rechargeable here. I like using that. It makes things a little bit quicker. A hammer. Always have a hammer for no matter what you're doing. Some glue, and I'll demonstrate what I've got that here for. I've got some toothpicks here. I'll demonstrate that goes with the glue. And I always like to pull all my screws and stuff aside, and I put them in a tray or on a white paper plate so I can see them. Because what winds up happening is you lose them. And at my age, it gets lost in here in the colors, and it gets hard to see them, and you wind up short. So make sure you can at least get to them, and make sure you have the right ones. A lot of these cabinets, I find there's two different size screws for the hinges. You'll have long ones on the door and short ones in the actual hutch, or just the opposite, long ones in the hutch and short ones in the door. So make sure you get the right ones that came out of the holes to begin with. If you forget, easiest way is just count them. Because there's 3 and 2 on your hinges. So if you do a count, you can figure out how many screws go where and just match that up. First thing that I do is I do not put the handle on or the knob until last. I leave that off so that you can set your door flat. I put a towel down or something soft so you don't scratch the paint that somebody did a great job painting, because she tends to get a little bit mad when she has to redo it. So yeah, thumbs up, what I do is I start off, I put the hinges on first. You don't have to put the hinges on first. You can put them on after. I keep going, put the hinges on first. It just makes it a little bit easier. So when you put the chicken wire on, you put the wire on and it can lay over the top of your hinges. Otherwise, a lot of times you wind up having to shove the hinges underneath your chicken wire, or your mesh. I gotta call it mesh. What happens is, if you put the wire down first, then all of a sudden you're trying to squeeze this down underneath, and it makes it a lot harder to do. So what I do is I put the hinges on first. Now, a lot of times, this is where the glue and the toothpicks may come in. So a lot of times what you will find, and this is a little trick, you'll find that these holes a lot of times might be stripped out. So your screw just goes right straight in and just spins. So one of the things you can do is you take your toothpick, put your toothpick in the hole, and just break it off in there. Now you can add a little bit of glue beforehand if you want, but then you have to wait for it to dry. And then once you put your screw in, that extra wood in that hole actually gives your screw something to bite into and your hole is no longer stripped out. Your screw doesn't spin. It's in nice and tight, almost like it's a brand new hole in there. And sometimes, depending on the size of the screws that you're using, you may have to use a couple pieces of toothpick. One may not be enough, but you'll know when you put the screw in the first time. You'll know if one's going to be enough or if you'll need two. So it's always good to just have those toothpicks handy. I always throw a couple here and have the glue if you want to glue them. And that tightens everything down. Then we move to the mesh. I already semi-pre-cut this because I knew how wide it was going to be. So I pre-cut it, and because I'm doing 2 doors, I cut it in one length and I just have to cut it in half. And I'll show you, I know this is 19 inches that I need. And what I do when I measure these, this is an important part. When you measure, you want to make sure you leave yourself enough room from this edge so you have room for the staples to grab. So when I measure it, I'll go from about the middle down to the middle. I come up with 19 inches. You can go all the way if you want. If you want to have the mesh covering the entire thing, give yourself a little bit more room there. You can do that as well. I choose to just go a little bit right in the middle. So you take 19 inches, measure your 19 inches. I'm not even going to use the gloves right now because this is just a shortcut. But your 19 inches, this mesh is nice because it's easy to follow the line. You find your 19 inches and you've got the line. You just cut along the line. All the way across, you'll cut it out. Now this mesh, compared to what we used to use, it's a lot harder to work with, but I actually like it that way. I like it being a little bit more difficult because you'll see in a minute when we put it down, it's a lot easier to line up and get it straight compared to the other stuff that the chicken wire or whatever it was we were using.
It was chicken wire. The hexagon chicken wire, and then this is the mesh netting.
You just cut your way across, and you can see these edges. This is why you need the gloves. You can see these sharp edges sticking out. They will poke you, and it hurts. And then you get blood all over everything, and she gets mad again.
Yes.
You got your 19 inches. I tried flattening it out a little bit because you see because it comes in a roll. It comes curved. She can show you the big.
We got the big tall roll. So this is how it was purchased on Amazon.
Mesh, and you lay it down. One of the things to look for is on the hole where your handle goes. You may cross over that hole. It may wind up in the middle, but you can always. That's why you have the smaller cutters. You can always just reach in there when you're done and cut that off before you put the handle on.
Those cutters come in handy.
So you just line everything up, get it as on it. Make sure you know on your staple gun where your staples come out from. They don't come directly from the very, very front of the gun. They're set back a little bit the way they come out. And most of your staple guns will have a mark or an area that you can figure out. This one, this little ridge here is about where my staples come out at. So I know when I line it up that they're going to come out right at that area. And then once you get it all lined up, make sure that you're pretty even on both ends. You just pop a staple in and you work your way around. You can see the staple didn't go all the way in. That happens a lot. That's why we have the hammer. Work your way around. Don't get too close to this edge, because if you get too close to this edge, what will happen is this will chip or break off. And remember, on a lot of these, if you take glass panes out, a lot of times there's a lip edge in there on both sides where the glass slides into. So you got to make sure you're behind that, otherwise you'll break it off. And you just work your way around. And
woke up to a sunny day.
And then you can see, as I said, the hinge is already underneath your mesh, so you don't have to worry about trying to get it underneath there. like I said, I also left myself very little room here. Just pop the staple in. And then on these corners, I try and put, you'll see there's a little, it sticks up just a little bit right here because of the hinge. I'll try and put another staple down here in this corner just to keep it down, just so the customer doesn't wind up catching themselves on it. And you take your hammer and just kind of work your way around and hammer those staples in. And another reason for using the stainless steel staples, as I said, they're a little bit stronger. I found regular staples, 9 times out of 10, you wind up having to redo a lot of your staples because you can see like this one here. See how that bent up? So what I'll do is, and I don't have a regular pair of pliers with me, but I will take that staple if I can get a hold of it, pull it out, and just put another one in. Part of that's because I hit right on the mesh. There you go. But the stainless steel staples tend to drive in more solid than a standard staple does. And if you find yourself buying stainless steel staples and you don't find the big pack, this is a small pack here. If you can't find the big pack and you only find the small one, grab 2, because the next time you go back to Lowe's or Ace or any of those, they're not going to have them. It always happens that way. They're very hard to find, and you wind up having to order them, and you wait an extra 2 days for it to get here. I'll pound it in, and now it's ready to just put the handle on.
So I will show you an example of the hutch that is, this one did sell, they just aren't picking it up yet. This is the wire mesh netting in the door hung up. So it gives you that chicken wire feel, but I like this kind of look for certain things. There's certain ones that the chicken wire is cute, but I liked this kind of netting look.